Hello, friends. You are listening to the Practical Tactical Penguin podcast. I am the Gun Penguin. Tonight, we're going to talk about coronavirus and the sort of ammo shortage that has resulted from it. We're going to talk about what we liked and absolutely detested at SHOT Show. And I don't know if we have time, we might even rake the Mandalorian over the coals so that all of you can have weird nerd seizures in the comments.
It was fine. It was okay.
It was just okay. It was just totally okay.
It was definitely a show, and I watched it all.
Meanwhile, Star Trek Picard is fucking spectacular, which has really surprised me.
Who would have thought after Discovery?
Yeah, Discovery is difficult for me to even get through. I haven't been able to finish the second season. Have you?
No. Do you think it would be better if Chris Pine was in it? Because at least he's charming?
Anything would make it better. Having any charming character would make it better. I kind of liked Captain Lorca. He was kind of interesting, but I think he's gone now. I kind of liked him. Everybody else, I don't give two shits about him. What do you think?
Yeah. Let's talk about a Picard instead.
Yeah, absolutely. But first, coronavirus, ammo buying panic. What do you think?
What do I think? Panic buying obviously is not cool. I'm not sure about the reaction to all of this. Is this something to be aware of and to be careful? Obviously. I'm currently involved in a statewide shelter in place, which is the government essentially saying, please don't go to concerts or bars. How about you? Have they instituted that by you yet?
No, and we probably won't just because of the way things are in the South. But our infinitely wise governor, Henry McMaster, has put a curfew in place from 11 a.m. to, I believe, or 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. during hours when no one was outside anyway, so it's not actually doing anything. But I think that was mostly just so that we would feel like something was being done. And restaurants can now sell booze on the sidewalk, which...
Cool.
I don't know who that's helping or what that's doing for anybody, but I mean, that's cool. If it's helping the economy, that's fine, I guess. Let's see what else. They have shut down restaurants from, having actual sit-down dinner and lunch service, which is very smart. And I've noticed that generally, maybe, I don't know if this is regional or not, but it seems that folks our age here in South Carolina are not taking it seriously and are just going about their lives business as usual, going to house parties with their friends and shit. It's just dumb. God, just go sit home, you fucking idiots, please.
Yeah, I'm seeing that for sure up here as well. Pretty much under 30 people are treating it like it's a big joke, and like I've even been seeing articles and shit about like the new TikTok thing is like the coronavirus challenge, like licking toilets or something like that. I don't know how much of it is
gross.
I don't know how much of it's like internet crap and what's true or not, because I haven't looked into it. It doesn't interest me. But I've been seeing that a lot. And I've also been seeing it a lot from like older people. I can't even tell you how many times in the last few weeks I've heard, well, if it's my time, it's my time. I'm going to go to 17 stores anyway, type deal. I fall somewhere in the middle. I don't mind being home. I didn't know that this was a big thing for some people because I would prefer to be home most of the time. And I don't know. I was kind of prepared to begin with. I live in an apartment, so I'm not like crazy into preparedness, but I want to be. That's how my brain works. And
sure. One
of the first things, I got an iPod Classic way back whenever they were cool. And one of the first things the first podcast I ever downloaded was called the Survival Podcast with Jack Spirko. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
Oh, man.
Although I was, like yourself, I was an early adopter of the iPod Classic.
Oh, yeah. Well, dude, it was so cool. It came preloaded with that, like, ball snake game where you turn the wheel around, and you could fit all your CDs on it and go on LimeWire.
That's right. Those were the days.
Yeah, so I've always been into the preparedness type stuff because, I mean, in my growing up, we had Y2K, we had 9/11, we had, Sandy Hook. So preparing for ammunition shortages. I mean, the whole time I've been a gun owner, there's been ammo shortages, and it's been a weird golden age recently that I think a lot of people that are newish to the industry, to the lifestyle, don't understand that it's really a lot of feast and famine with ammo and guns and prices. And what do you think?
No, I mean you're absolutely right. The last 5 years have been unparalleled by any other time. I mean, maybe pre gun control measures in the 70s and 80s, I'm sure ammo was a bit more plentiful, but it was also more expensive. If you look at the numbers, even back then, the last 5 years have been the cheapest that ammo has ever been in human history by a long shot. And because, like yourself, I remember the bad times. I've been shooting and stockpiling ammo since, I don't know, I guess '02 is when I first started, trying to fill my closet up with as many boom nuggets as I possibly could. It's been one catastrophe after another where, like you said, you can get bullets for a few years and then you can't. So I don't ever get to a point where I don't have any, with that notion that I'll be able to get more later. I keep a certain amount stockpiled at all times, and that's just the smart thing to do. It's not as much prepping for some sort of apocalyptic scenario as it is just, God, with what's going on right now, it might be 6 months before you can readily walk down to the PSA or wherever and just buy a brick of 22 if you want it.
Right, or years, because there was 3 or 4 years in there where it was extraordinarily difficult to find 22. And I ended up selling my 22 guns because I could never find ammo for it. I remember we went to a gun show, and I think I spent $7 or $8 on the little 50 round. I think it was like Golden Bullets or something, Remington. And it just was like, if I'm paying this for 22, why don't I just buy 9mm? So I mean, hopefully it's about 6 months. There's no reason it shouldn't be just a few months. The only reason we're having the problems now seems to be production isn't down that I'm aware of. Import is going to be down for a little bit probably, but the majority of the ammunition I personally shoot's domestic, factory loaded. So like, it's just that everyone bought cases at a time, and once that ammo panic, gun buying panic, kind of evens out a little bit, and we won't have as much of an issue. And I didn't think ammo was going to be a big deal. Probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had several family members who know that I'm the guy who trains and shoots a bunch, and they were like, "Oh, are you stocking up on ammo?" It's like, well, no, not really. I mean, even third world countries aren't having horrible riots and everything about this. So I didn't think that it was going to get bought up as much as it is right now. But do you want to talk about the price gouging with cheaper than dirt and stuff?
Oh, of course, man. I mean, that which they do every single time.
Yeah, I didn't realize people still shopped there. I swore them off after Sandy Hook in like 2014, I think it was.
This is just what they do. And, I'm particularly worried about the import stuff because that's all I shoot. And that's actually a huge component of my testing procedure with guns. So if you watch one of my testing videos, it's like, 3,000 rounds in whatever amount of time through this new gun. I'm not firing the weaker domestic stuff like Blazer or something like that through these guns. These are all getting NATO spec plus P 9mm. And I'm not sure how I'm going to keep doing the tests the way I've been doing them, because I've looked around online, I'm no more Gico or Gecko or whatever it is in Fiocchi for me, which is all I've been buying. I'm actually genuinely concerned about this.
That Gecko stuff is great for the cost.
Absolutely, man. It's amazing. And, I have a stockpile of it, but that's going to run out in a few months, so I can continue my testing to a point. But if we aren't getting imported ammo before then, the only thing that's comparable in power is really expensive defensive loads, and I can't afford to buy a case of HSTs to put through the VP9 or whatever it is that month. So
the only thing I can think of, you're right, the closest I would probably say is a Speer Lawman. They load pretty hot, so
that's good stuff.
It feels similar to their defensive HSTs. That's the only thing I could think that would even be comparable, but again, it's more expensive than your faves. And what would be fun if the apocalypse really does happen legit, we can have a Gun Penguin movie where you're kind of like the Book of Eli, but instead of transporting the last Bible, you're transporting the last domestic Gecko ammo.
That's right.
To like
and shooting it along the way.
Well, no, you're like delivering it to like in range or something.
Right. Yeah. Carl and Ian definitely share my love of the of fine imported ammunitions. Yeah. So that's that's my biggest concern is just getting the ammo that I like, because it's not a negligible difference in power. It's quite substantial. It's as much as sort of a 15% or more difference.
It's noticeable
in some
for
cases.
Sure.
So.
And
Yeah,
if
really
you
is.
shoot a lot of comps, if you like you're rolling specials and shit, the Gecko ammo activates the comp really well, and it is shockingly light recoiling with a comp. So it saves some of that Gecko for when you start experimenting with comps. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good idea. I'm also, before we jump into skewering cheaper than dirt, I am considering taking up hand loading now. For the last 5 years, manufactured ammo was so inexpensive. Why would you?
Right.
It's not that much cheaper. There's a lot of extra expense and hassle, but I'm looking at the numbers now, and I'm thinking, no, that's probably a wise move.
Well, when you could pick up factory ammunition for like 16 to 18 cents a round, like even minimum wage, your time is more valuable than that. So again,
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was never even interested space-wise, investment-wise, learning, because I've seen several people blow up their guns by double charging them or whatever. But if this is
Absolutely.
prolonged, I could totally see the benefit in really diving headfirst into getting a pretty substantial hand loading setup.
Especially for a few calibers. I shoot a lot of 357 and 44, and 44 in particular, even before all of this stuff happened, was kind of hard to find. Hard to find the stuff that I like anyway, and very expensive. So I'd already been considering hand loading that stuff, but based on the prices I've seen this week, just for a box of PPU 44, if it stays where it is, I'm gonna have to hand load it. It's not going to be optional.
44 is a lot like 10 millimeter, where you can really have fun with the different, combinations and really dialing in your specific recipe and everything.
Absolutely, especially through a Red Hawk, because it's so much more forgiving than one of the Smith frames. You can really play with those. That's a very elastic round, I suppose you'd say. So what cheaper than dirt? What kind of backlash have you seen on the internet? Are people actually pissed off this time?
You know what? I'm not sure, because I thought they were last time, and I'm not, dude. When you're selling 1,000 rounds of Blazer brass for like $1,000, it was just under $1 per round.
Yikes.
That is pretty inexcusable to me, but I think people are very loud and then they forget. I don't think people have very long memories. So it will be curious to see. I will be tracking how people long-term respond to this. I honestly, I didn't know Cheaper Than Dirt was even still a website. So the first time I had seen them recently was because of that controversy. And I don't know. What do you think? Do you think people will remember? Because we've had the Benchmade, Surefire. We've had several, Springfield Armory. We've had several pretty substantial controversies in the gun industry, and they all just keep trucking along like nothing's up. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think people give a shit. I think that as soon as something blows over, if somebody is, tooling around on Google and they find that Cheaper Than Dirt has a cheaper price slightly for whatever piece of shit thing they're looking for, they're just going to buy it there and not care. And you know what? Cheaper Than Dirt usually is not even that cheap on anything. They should be called mediumer than dirt, because that's much more accurate. But people will look at it and go, oh, I can get a PMag for $1 less there than at Palmetto State Armory. So next thing you know, they're just shopping at Cheaper Than Dirt like nothing happened, and they get on AR15.com and tell all their fucking dirtbag friends, and then they get on there and buy the cheaper PMags too, and Cheaper Than Dirt's just back in everybody's good graces.
With how many new gun owners there are, I wonder how many people don't know what the actual prices for things are. Because I've been thinking about that.
100%.
I've been Googling products just for fun in the last few minutes, and Cheaper Than Dirt showing up on the first page for everything I Google that's gun related. So if you are new to firearms, you just bought your first handgun because of this whole ordeal, and then you found out, oh, you actually do have to wait. There is no gun show loophole. You get your gun, and you're like, well, I need 1,000 rounds, and you go on, and it's just $1,000 everywhere. Maybe people think that's just what it's supposed to be. I'm not sure how that will pan out when people find out in a few months that all this panic buying, their stuff isn't worth what they think it's worth.
That will inevitably be an issue, and I think the market will start to settle. There are a lot of people right now who are on arms list, paying arms list prices for arms list LEO trade-in Glocks. You know, we were on Discord the other evening, the TGP Discord folks, marveling at some of the just disgusting arms list deals. It'd be so much funnier if the website was called armsdeal.com. Oh my God, why is that not the name of that website? Somebody please buy the domain armsdeal.com. I want it. See, we were marveling at the arms list deals, and they were selling. I mean, you'd check back a couple hours later, and I guess somebody paid $800 for that Glock Model 22 with 3 magazines that are weirdly listed as being drop free, and 200 rounds of American Eagle 40.
So
yeah, it's
what
sad.
You're saying is now's the ideal time for me to flip my PSA builds.
100%. And if anybody who has a CZ or a PSA or some sort of lousy surplus pistol, now's the time, my friends.
Get rich off your Makarov money.
Yeah, that's right. And for those of us who don't have Makarovs and want them, well, we're never going to get them now.
Yeah, no joke. They were already drying up.
So this is really interesting.
How many are you going to up your Beretta? Are you going to up your Beretta purchases for the little cheetahs?
Yeah. I mean, I had been considering that for a while, and I don't think I have a choice now. I think I'll have to, just to make sure that I have them. So I don't know if I've talked about this much online, but somewhere along the way, I became completely obsessed with the Beretta 81. I bought it because it was an interesting thing to add to my Beretta collection. It's a cool little gun. It shoots well. Yada yada yada. Well, I'll be damned. It's one of the best guns I've ever owned. It's convenient. It's small. It has a great trigger. It holds a lot of rounds. The magazines are reliable. The magazines are sturdy. There's a lot to love there. Holsters are still readily available.
It's a laser beam.
It's a laser beam. It has no recoil. You can just hose the target down with bullets. So somewhere along the way, I ended up with like a holster and 10 magazines and 1,000 rounds of 32 ACP. And it got out of control. The question is, when are you going to get one?
I don't know, man, but I think I'll have to, because you're going to have like the coolest militia around. If the
the hipster militia.
If the apocalypse does, if this, the Boogaflu becomes the Boogaloo, and this is permanent, then, geez, man, you're going to have just an entire army of people armed with Beretta 81s, and It's you know what? It's one of those surplus guns that doesn't show its age as much as it should. It's still really good, like in pretty much every conceivable way. It's a little bit heavy compared to modern guns because it's like all aluminum, right? Or is it steel?
The frame is aluminum, but it has a very small steel slide. But the slide is small, but it's also kind of a bulbous frame, which I think is adding to the weight. There's a lot of aluminum in there.
I played bass for bulbous frame. Good old days. Bulbous frame.
Oh yeah, bulbous frame. Yeah, they had a lot of hits back in 2004.
We're all over the place. We're all over the place on this one. Coronavirus, not cool.
This is what people really want anyway. They just want to hear us yammer. So this is, while we're on the topic of surplus guns, this is in no way related really to anything we've talked about up to this point, but I've had a lot of people online asking, so I only have $300, what should I buy? Everything is sold out. And the answer that I've been giving is just the same one I usually give. Go get something really good and surplus, because those guns are going to run most of the time. What's your answer to that question?
I don't have much experience with surplus guns outside of the Makarov. That I've
Sure.
had a lot of fun with that one. That was the first handgun I purchased. It was I was very into the show Burn Notice and video games and stuff, and it looked kind of similar to James Bond's guns. And it was at the used counter at my local gun store, and I was like, oh, yeah, I think it was like $220 or something. So that's one benefit for sure for surplus guns. The problem with some of them is they're in oddball calibers, but that tends to be more rifles, not so much handguns. Even the 81, like 32, you can find pretty much anywhere. 9x18 you can find pretty much anywhere. So that's fine. And places like Hornady have defensive loads for those as well. Spare parts is a problem for a lot of them, and magazines is probably the biggest problem for a lot of them. It's difficult for some surplus firearms for you to be able to find magazines, or they're just ridiculously expensive on the secondary market if you do find them. But yeah, I could see something like the 81. Recently, I've been really into, I don't own them obviously, but I've used them and they seem to be getting good reviews, is the new Tauruses, which, I mean, It feels like I should wash my mouth out when I say that. But the new Taurus guns, the G3 and the G2C, I believe they are, seem to be perfectly adequate, and they're cheap.
That's fair.
I know it's heresy, but I had pretty good luck with a High Point back in the day. I bought one on a whim because it was like $100 or something like that, and it ate everything I fed it. It was super ugly, and it had a weird recoil impulse because the slide is so giant. It's like 3 Glock sides glued together. But
yeah, and they're all blowback. Like regardless of caliber, they're blowback.
Well, mine was in 380, and it had a wicked pinned compensator on there. So it was. I'm not bragging, but it was pretty controllable. I think it held 8 rounds or something. But honestly, I mean, for $100 bill, if you can walk out with a High Point, I think that would be fine as well. If you're that budgetary minded, that you're in the sub $200 category or something, or you spent your $1,000 on ammo and you have $100 left over. I don't know.
Right. What about a Janik? Those are the other ones that I like a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. The TP9.
Yeah.
Those are nice. Those. I know a lot of people don't like them because they're imported from Turkey, and Turkey has some questionable human rights violations and stuff going on. Let's say.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah, but if you could do a lot worse. So they're very affordable. They can hang with the big dogs. A lot of the guns we've been talking about, you definitely have a budget gun. I always said Canics, but the Janics, they feel like a gun that should cost twice what they do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it makes sense. It's just a clone of the Walther P99. Of course, it's a great gun, but
sized up a little for most of them.
Yeah, and they're like you said, there are a few dimensional changes, but it's sort of fundamentally at its core just a cheap imported version of one of the finest guns that you can purchase with human money. And speaking of Turkish guns, if you can still find one, the Stoger Beretta Cougar copies, which were really they were Beretta Cougars. They were made on the same tooling. Although to me, it didn't look like the finish was Brunaton. I think it was something else, but those were great guns for the money. I used to see those turn up locally new at the store for $2.99. And God, I wish I'd bought a couple of them at the time. I didn't know they were being discontinued. But that's a really great gun for the money.
I'm not sure if I've ever seen one in person before, but that sounds compelling, especially for the price. You can't go wrong at $300.
Yeah, especially when you consider how much even a used Beretta Cougar is now. Those have crept up over the years. I was extremely lucky to get mine when I did for what I paid for it, because people have sort of discovered that, it's like a PX4, only more like a 92. So can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Berettas, but they seem to only be appreciated after they're gone. Because the PX4 as well,
always.
I mean, that was such an interesting gun, and it went nowhere. And now because of Langdon, it's kind of coming back in fashion to have a PX4. But that tilting barrel and everything, those are just fascinating. I could see in a decade or so those being rare and sought after collectibles, because they're just really neat, and they're still readily available and pretty cheap. So If you can
Yeah,
spend, if you're in the
absolutely.
$300 range and you have an extra 100 or so, you might want to pick up a PX4.
Yeah, and there are occasionally police trade-in PX4s that are at the $300 mark, and there, a lot of people online, I've heard them say, "Oh, the rotating barrel's bunk. There's nothing. You're not gaining anything for that system." And if you believe that, you haven't shot the gun.
Yeah,
It's if you
you
shoot
feel
it
it
back
for
to back
sure.
with something that's a Browning action. It's the difference is there. So. Branch out and try something
you even
different.
feel
You
it.
might find that you really like
You
it.
even feel it if with the full size and compact. If you go to the subcompact, which I almost bought the subcompact instead of a Glock 26 when I was looking for a little gun before all the single stacks came out, and the subcompact does not have the rotating barrel because there wasn't enough space, if
Yes.
I'm remembering correctly. And
No, you're correct. Yeah.
just going from the subcompact to the compact, it's very noticeable. The rotating barrel has some effect. It's not an intuitive. It's not like throwing a comp or an X300. Even throwing an X300 on the front of a gun mellows out the recoil impulse quite a bit because you're hanging like a 5-ounce counterweight up on the muzzle. But
Yeah.
it's something to experience for sure. I know with the social distancing and stuff, you can't go to the gun store to try one out right now. But I would maybe the benefit from all of this will be that people find a new appreciation for the PX4 because it's a really neat little design.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And the last thing we should talk about in relation to coronavirus, I think I really want to. I just have to say how pissed off I am at the folks on both sides who are either on the one hand saying that this is the apocalypse, this is the end of the world, all things are over, life will never be as it once was, and then you have people on the other side saying, there's nothing wrong, it's all fine. Both of you
It's
are
just
dumb.
the flu,
If we
bro.
just take
It's just the flu.
yeah. Oh God. Yeah, if we take reasonable measures, yes, things will return to the way that they once were. But if we refuse to take any reasonable measures, then those people might become right. The economy might never recover. So for the love of God, if you're listening to this, if you're one of the 4 people who will listen to this, just take common sense measures. Yes, coronavirus is real. Yes, it will kill old people. No, that's not a good thing. So stay in your house. Stay in your house. Unless you really just hate your weird old uncle, maybe go give him a hug and then go back home and don't leave after that.
That is fantastic advice. I'm right there with you. I do think it's funny when you said one more thing about coronavirus. I completely forgot we were talking about coronavirus. I was
Me too.
I was still on the surplus gun thing, and I was like, you know what? The PX4 really is sweet. I should really look into those. And I was getting all ready to go on Gunbroker to look up PX4s because maybe they're not popular enough to be hit by the panic increases. And then you're like, oh yeah, one more thing about coronavirus. It's like, oh man, okay, yep. That I totally have nothing interesting to say because I was not on the coronavirus thing mentally anymore.
This is one of those podcasts where we're gonna listen back to it and go, I don't even remember how we got there. I don't even the whole coronavirus thing was really just a terrible segue to get us to the PX4. I mean, like most other conversations that we have.
Well, yeah, what we do is we reverse engineer our podcast. So we pick a topic, the PX4 Storm, and then we find the most convoluted way to get to that topic so that it seems like we're slipping and we're losing it and just talking. But we got to the point we were trying to make, and I think we made it well. So hopefully no one caught on to that.
It's like a George Lucas script. Yeah.
Well, no, if it was George
Yeah.
Lucas, we would all have to have it planned out from the get-go 40 years ago and totally have it planned originally and not be winging it for the last 40 years.
It's poetry. See, it rhymes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's so dense.
We should do one podcast where our dialogue is all George Lucas-like dialogue. It's just super
we
stiff.
could do that.
I don't like saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Can Harry Plinkett narrate the whole thing?
No, it would be
though?
too interesting then, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What if we had a whole movie that was just walking and talking, George? What if people walked and then they talked? Like there was action at the beginning of the end, but in the middle, they just walked and talked.
That would be a good idea, but I think that we should do the entire thing on green screen about 20 years before green screen looks good. How does that sound?
But as long as they're walking and talking, I'm okay with it.
Yeah,
as long as they're walking
it's kind of
and
like an
talking
Aaron
in front of a green
Sorkin script.
screen.
It's kind of like an Aaron Sorkin script, just not intelligent.
Yeah, with nothing clever about it. Yeah. So now we have to jump into the quagmire of SHOT Show. I think I speak for both of us when I say though there was some cool shit at SHOT Show. Generally, both of us are pretty disappointed. I know we're also like a month and some change late to the party, but pretty disappointing. What do you think? What did you like the most, and what did you like the least?
All that means is we've had plenty of time to really think this through, and this segment will be very well structured. So, sure. I was very disappointed by SHOT Show. I didn't know what I was expecting, I guess, but nothing really caught my eye. And I don't know if it's just you kind of hit a critical mass with the industry, and it's just kind of like the same thing over and over again. But if I had to say something that really caught my eye, it's pretty much the whole PSA booth, which is humorous because it's basically the same stuff just made cheaper by a different company. But I mean, they hit us with the Dagger, they hit us with the Jackal, they hit us with the MP5 clone if it ever actually does come out. They have a whole smattering of AKs and different calibers and pistols and rifles, and they're jumping into the 5.45 game allegedly, which is the poison bullet, which is amazing. I don't know. I was a lot of the stuff at the PSA booth really caught my eye, and I watched several of the SHOT Show videos just on the PSA booth, and they seem to have had the largest variety of things that was like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, no, I'm game for that. Especially when you start to see the prices of some of the things. Like, I wouldn't have been as interested in the Glock clone, the PSA Glock style pistol. It's basically a Gen 3 with some extra little upgrades, except for the fact that they're saying it's going to be about a $300 MSRP, which is crazy. Same with the MP5. We're looking at a solid $1,000 to $1,500 cheaper than the HK one. It's even still significantly cheaper than like the clones like the PTR and Zenith. With the Dagger, it looks very B&T-ish to me. I don't know what you thought, but that's going to be sub $800. They're saying it has a monolithic upper. It's piston driven. It's going to be in 5.56 and 300 blackout. They have AK cranks coming out, clones obviously. They just had a lot of stuff. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, I think they're absolutely on it right now. And I know they've worked to expand their manufacturing operations in the last couple of years, and I'd kind of wondered what that was going to mean. I figured it would just mean maybe they'll get the MP5 into production faster. Maybe it'll mean that there won't be long delays before they get stuff back in stock. Turns out they were planning to just completely fucking dominate the future of the industry. Specifically, the Glock pistol. You know, we had the conversation just a little bit ago about what would you recommend to someone for $300? Would you tell them to buy surplus or whatever? Well, if PSA is selling something that is completely compatible, or almost completely compatible with Gen 3 Glock parts, wouldn't you have a hard time recommending anything else to anybody at that price point? Well, what else would you recommend? Assuming the gun works, of course.
Yeah, if the gun works, it's a game changer, which that's thrown around a lot. But Glock Gen 3 parts are probably the most, out there parts, available parts. I mean, for a while there, you could order a complete lower parts kit on Amazon for Gen 3 Glocks. eBay is full of them. Every gun store, even local gun stores, they all have a wall of like Glock barrels, Glock side stops, and it's always Gen 3 usually. Gen 5 is definitely picking up, but Gen 3 is just dominating. And Gen 4 has a few parts that are like the magazine release is not backwards compatible, but even a lot of the Gen 4 parts are backwards compatible. And I think it's called the Dagger, the PSA Glock. It looks like a high-end Glock. The grip frame's a little bit different, but it has stippling. It has the accelerator cuts for your thumbs to rest on. It has front and rear slide serrations. It's going to be red dot compatible, or there will be a version that's red dot compatible. Like it's going to be extremely difficult to recommend something other than that if it's reliable. I think we both have fairly in-depth experience with the hit and miss quality of PSA on some stuff, but they have a great warranty. They always cover their customers, and I've had real good luck with my PSA stuff. So if the Glock esque clone is reliable, man. $300 MSRP, which means street price will probably be lower. I think it's going to be it's going to be flying off the shelf.
Yeah. So PSA is local to me. Their manufacturing facility is right down the road from me, and like you said, I've also sort of had hit or miss quality from their manufacturing, but their customer service has always been top notch. They are very concerned with making sure that I like what I bought and that it works. It takes them a million years to get back to you and actually get the damn thing in to get it fixed. But the same thing goes for some other companies. Not every company can be Microtech and Aero Precision.
Yeah, in their defense, they are moving so fast. Like, their output is insane. The amount of complete firearms they're putting out there is close to unfathomable. Like, it's hard to understand how much. And you're right with the production. Like, who would have thought they would be making a pistol and an MP5 and AKs, and do they make all the parts in house? Correct.
Well, no. Some stuff is brought in from some barrels and some other things. Or it's kind of on a model by model basis, but some parts are brought in, some are made in house. Now, if you take something like I just bought an AKP in Plum, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the a very fun issue I've had with it, but that gun is made, as far as I can tell, completely in house. I think they may even make the barrel, although I'm not sure. It wouldn't surprise me if they farmed the barrel out, but it looks like most everything else is made in house other than the furniture. Which, by the way, the issue I had with the AKP, the assembly is beautiful, the trigger's beautiful, the finish is beautiful, but the piston is bent as fuck. Not just a little bit bent. It looks like it forgot to take its Viagra, and now it's just very droopy and sad. Like, in the Viagra commercial, when it's like, if have you seen poor quality erections? I don't know what the hell that means, but I think that my PSA AKP is having a poor quality erection right now. Poor bastard. So, but here's the thing, though. They will fix it. They'll bend over backwards to fix it. It might take a little bit, but they won't rest until I'm ecstatic with the gun and it's the best AK I've ever had.
I'm just waiting for the Gun Penguin video where, like, you and your AKP are sitting in a bathtub in the middle of a forest, and there's like all this small text going across the screen with medical issues that could arise, and I think it's going to be beautiful. Beautiful marketing.
It's only a matter of time. Yeah. So, and the other thing that really got my attention, even more so than the dagger, the more I've thought about it, is actually the Jackal, the 300 Blackout PDW thing. And what made me think about it more carefully is all of the excitement surrounding the Daniel Defense PDW, which I don't like so much or really understand. What do you think about the Jackal and having this this sort of awesome, AR 180 style upper thing? I think it's a long stroke gas piston, though.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
Yeah, and it's monolithic. I think it's probably, it's all contained.
So if correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like an AR 180 bolt head sort of system, but it's riding on a long stroke piston instead of a short stroke piston, right?
I it's been a bit since I watched all the videos, but that sounds correct to me.
Okay.
I wasn't so much interested in the specific stats of it, the specific specs, as much as I am interested in this technology finally making its way to a budget platform. And like the Daniel Defense will be like $2,000 or so, I'm guessing, because that's pretty much the Daniel Defense price area for
sure.
a 300 Blackout. It's that pretty much every other company offers basically the same thing. Nothing about it other than, don't want to be libelous here, but probably overgassed. Every company has something similar. Whereas the dagger, what's it called? The PSA one.
The
Jackal.
Jackal.
Yeah, like the Bruce Willis movie. The Jackal's so interesting to me because they are doing it in 300 Blackout. They're doing it in 5.56 as well. And you should just be able to plop it on any standard mil-spec lower and have a piston system. So if you're going to suppress something, I could see that being pretty compelling. And yeah, it just looks funky. I think it could be neat. And last price I saw was $799, I want to say, which that alone is pretty compelling to see how it works. And I'm just always interested when they introduce something like that, if it's going to change the market any, if the consumer base is really going to jump on board with it, because Brownells has been doing the retro line for a while with 180s, and they don't seem to really be catching on.
Of course.
And I wonder if PSA bringing it to market, it'll be affordable enough and everyman enough that we'll start to see a surge in that type of mechanical situation. What do you think?
Well, I know that you're probably less concerned with like the weird, stupid technical shit, than I am. Like I get really fixated on like how it operates and all that stuff. And but that's one of the things that drew me to this more than anything else is it's the operating system is genuinely clever and interesting, and is on paper anyway going to offer some genuine advantages over the AR-180. Upper that Brownells is offering, but it's also going to offer potentially some benefits even over SIG's 300 blackout fancy Rattler
MCX
Rattler doodad. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting because I think the Rattler is a short stroke piston. And I could be wrong about that, but I think it's only a short stroke. Which neither one is better than the other. But if you're gonna have, I feel like the idea with one of these guns is to have a little PDW with a really hard running system that'll power through any type of shit. Like you can throw it in your backpack, and no matter how much mud and fucking lint and shit gets in there, the system's gonna power through it, right?
Right, and because it has a captured recoil system and buffer, it doesn't require a bufferless operating system. You can throw a folding brace on there. Yeah, you can get that package really small.
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting, and some of the advantages over just the Brownells upper is it's got that big open track that the charging handle runs in that lets in all that mud and stuff. This thing looks, it's probably not going to be as closed up as an AR-15, which in my experience is a DI AR-15 is the most reliable mechanism I've found. But I think this is going to be pretty enclosed and pretty tough to fuck up. What do you think?
Well, when I'm operating, I operate real hard.
As you do. As we do,
I think when you're in the operating, it will be beneficial probably.
That's good.
It's not something I really like the whole truck gun, backpack gun thing. It's neat for sure, but it doesn't factor into my usage whatsoever. I think it would be fascinating for us to get Jackals, because I think that
definitely.
I think we would have some fun with them. I'm more interested in the long-term maintenance required, which I'm assuming there won't be much, because it's kind of like combining the piston of an AK with the operating system of an AR, which PWS has tried as well. And you're right with the MCX. That seems to be a pretty reliable system. I don't have much. I'm not, as you know from experience with me recently, I'm not too deep in the rifle side of things until very recently. And I'm still just, I'm in the afterglow with my DI arrow guns that anything other than direct impingement is just fun for me. I don't know enough about the technical specs or the operating systems to really have an opinion either way. I just saw it for the MSRP, and I really like the idea of it being a monolithic upper that you can just kind of, experiment around. I think it's fascinating, especially for the price. And again, I haven't had any problems with PSA.
A couple of things I should note, though. I want to be very clear. I'm not in any way saying that any sort of piston is inferior to or is superior to DI, as you often hear. I'm a diehard DI AR-15 person. I still believe that just for almost everyone, a standard Aero Precision DI gun is going to be the best gun you can possibly buy. And all this stuff, like you described it as being fun, that is what it would be for me as well. Like I would still give up any of this if somebody said I couldn't have just a regular old Aero M4E1. So I've found that these piston guns, They run well, but they are not as resistant to sort of external crap getting in there as just a regular ass original Eugene Stoner designed AR. That's still the best thing we have access to.
When do you think that? When do you think that
to,
turned around? Because when I was first getting into firearms and stuff around the AR-15, ARF.com, pistons were like all the rage, man. And DI was like, oh, it poops where it eats, and blah blah blah. When do you think the sentiment turned around to? I think for this platform, AR-15s in general, that DI is probably the way to go. That seems to be more the sentiment recently. But I haven't been involved in rifles as much. When did that dynamics shift?
Well, I'm fundamentally a rifle shooter. I think that's one of the things that makes this podcast interesting is I would consider you a pistol shooter. I'm a rifle shooter, and I like having those perspectives. I think it started to turn in the last 3 years, and really one channel is almost completely responsible for that, and that's In Range TV. And Ian McCullum on Forgotten Weapons to a lesser degree, because he just doesn't talk about ARs as much on his channel. But some of us never gave up on DI. I've been a DI shooter since I got my first AR in late 2002, early 2003. And when the piston craze started to catch on, I remember thinking, I don't think this is really superior. I think you guys have just found the one or two situations where the piston is going to outperform the direct impingement. The direct impingement system.
Right.
And there are a few circumstances when that will happen. DI systems, if you flood the tube with water, it's going to fucking explode. But there are situations where you can make the piston choke. And across more varied situations, the DI system is more reliable than the piston is, in my experience. And I think people are finally starting to realize that, unless you're getting naked and, taking your gun into the bathtub with you and submerging it until all the bubbles quit coming out and then fucking rising up out of the water like a weird, pasty, naked seal and, it's setting off around, you're not going to see any benefit from the piston. For most people, you're going to get the best performance from that's operating. That's you should call your kitchen table your operating table. Somebody needs to do that.
It's the Mission HQ for the operating.
That's right. Join me at Mission HQ. I was really put off by piston guns at first because they're heavier and they get hotter. But I saw so much about them, being, oh, well, if you don't have a PWS or something, it's like I'd rather have an arrow than a PWS, personally. So I was just wondering, because you know more about that, and I would have asked you. I keep forgetting we're recording. I would have asked you if we weren't recording. But, I just noticed that sentiment shift. Maybe a few years ago, it feels like. And, with the What Would Stoner Do project, I could see the in-range guys really focusing on the benefits of a DI system. Yeah, and I hope I actually answered your question and didn't just fucking yammer around for like 10 minutes. But
the only thing I'm going to retain from that is getting out of the bathtub with your piston gun. But I appreciate it for that.
That was definitely the most
image.
important part.
Right.
Good. That was both the most important piece of information and the most erotic.
For sure.
All at once. Yeah, and I think people are finally realizing that, when you change that part of the AR, you're changing several other things that make it what it is and that were part of what made it so successful in the first place. If you need a piston gun, you didn't really need an AR-15 in the first place, and there were other better options that you could have gone with from the start. So why not just consider those guns from the beginning and let the AR-15 be what it is?
12.5 inches.
Too, that's right. That's what it is. The other thing is, the old myth, like you said, people saying it, it shits where it eats.
Right.
Well, it also turns out that all that high pressure gas coming out of that tube also blow all of the shit out of the bolt carrier area as well when the gun cycles. So it's there was the other myth that originated with the gun was that it was self-cleaning. Well, it's not fucking self-cleaning either, but it's not some horrible machine that's dumping all of this fouling back into the bolt carrier. There's more than with the piston in the bolt carrier, but the shit's got to go somewhere. It's either all getting dumped in the piston or it's going into the bolt carrier area. And the good thing about it being dumped in the bolt carrier area is then the tube can blow a good chunk of it out into the fucking atmosphere.
Right, and also the carbon then acts as like a dry film lubricant, and like obviously there's a point where it's doing more harm than good, but I wonder if the DI system in more middling conditions is actually more reliable than a piston, because the extra particulate getting pushed back there is also kind of helping, the important components to interface properly, especially if it's not oiled enough or something. A fun conversation.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could do a whole podcast that's just shitting on people who believe all of these silly AR-15 myths. I really enjoyed a military arms channel. Tim's doing the thing where he's got the BCM and he shoots 1,000 rounds out of it in a day, and then he puts the tape back on it, and he hasn't lubed it or anything. I think that's if you have a good DI AR-15, it's gonna run like that.
And he's up to a lot at this point.
Yeah, isn't it like 6,000 rounds?
I think he just finished up 6. Yeah, it's more than I was expecting, but very interesting stuff. So basically, what you're saying is, for research for this podcast, we're both just going to go on AR15.com and make a list of things people say.
Yeah, pretty much, and we're also going to say everything with as much vitriol as possible and be really insulting of anyone who doesn't believe exactly what we believe.
Oh, dude, I could do that.
That's a good way to do it. Oh yeah, man, that's good. You said that you were once an ARFCOM user, so it's built in right into your DNA.
I've never had an account. I was a lurker. I would Google things. I would Google things and read.
We all do that. We're all guilty of lurking on ARFCOM. So, all right, well, let me ask you the final question to wrap up all the PSA shit. And God, I'm so sorry I just yammered on for that long about AR-15s. Of the things that they talked about, between the MP5 clone, which I guess they didn't show this year, but the MP5 clone, the new AKs that they're doing, which I'm interested in a 5.45 for sure.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
And the Glock and the Jackal. What are you most interested in? What are you definitely going to buy without question?
Oh, I'll definitely buy the Glock just because it's cheapest, and I'm curious. The big part about the AKs and 5.45 that I'm excited about is hopefully that they offer a magazine solution, because the 5.45's downfall has been the magazines for a long time. That was the first rifle I ever got, was a 5.45 Viper, and outside Bulgarian magazines are still pretty available. And then if you wanted to get like a Bakelite magazine, dude, they're like $80 if you can find them. And then mag poles.
Yikes! I did not realize that.
Yeah, Bakelite 5.45 mags are really hard to find, and they're very sought after. The Circle 10 magazines are still like $40-$50 if you can find them. Magpul recently came out with 5.45 mags, but their AK mags have been hit or miss, because the 5.45 still have the plastic locking lug for the magazine. And with the 7.62 versions, that was a big problem with those magazines until the Gen 2 or 3, where they have the metal reinforcements where the magazine locks in to the magazine catch. So my big thing is, I'm hoping, because I think PSA did really good with the Scorpion mags. If they can do a magazine that's affordable for the 5.45s, that's going to be awesome for the industry. But to answer your question, for sure, first thing up, definitely the Glock. And if the MP5 ever comes out, I don't know how I'm going to be able to resist. So I'll probably end up with that as well. But yeah, definitely the Glock. How about you?
Well, I'm sort of just as interested in the Jackal. I mean, I know that's weird, but I'm really, really interested in the Jackal because it's something interesting. It's cool looking. You mentioned it looks like a B&T, so it kind of scratches that itch, but also the Glock. And I do want to say real quick, the PSA Scorpion mags, those don't actually work in my Scorpion, which really sucks and kind of pisses me off, because I bought a bunch of them and they don't fit in my gun.
Interesting. So do they just not drop in, or what's the issue?
Yeah, you can get them in, but you'd have to hammer them in. You'd have to hammer them into the gun.
Sounds like a good Friday night in the bathtub.
I mean, definitely. Why not? I can operate over here, a little bit more over there. Operate everywhere. Get bathwater all over every surface in the house.
That would be an awesome t-shirt.
Yeah. That's one of our
I operate
patches.
over here. I operate over there. I operate everywhere. And it's just a picture of Tex Grebner.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, Tex Grebner. Bless him. Bless him. He seems like the nicest guy in the world.
For
I
sure,
love
man.
him.
I was subscribed to him for a long time.
His fitness journey, man. He's so inspiring. Genuinely,
for sure.
I love him. That's a great channel. So I'm really into the Jackal and the Glock thing, but I do wish they would sort out the Scorpion mags, and there are a few other things that it's like they're so focused on new products sometimes that they let an existing problem slide for a little too long, you know.
Right. That makes sense.
And that's the Scorpion mags are one of the problems. But I didn't realize that about the 545 magazines, and I do want to tell you, my AKP came with a standard Magpul magazine without the steel reinforcements, and man, that thing's not going to last long.
No,
it's
they
already
break.
fucked up just for me playing with the gun. Yeah.
I'll be curious to see when yours breaks, because it will for sure break. And I'm just wondering, because you break everything, so it'll be curious to see when it breaks.
Yes, I need to stop breaking every tactical device.
No, it's good. You break it for the rest of us.
Yeah, but mostly that means it's still broken for me. I don't ever get to have anything that works. It's all broken. I've broken everything. Yeah. Most companies are pretty good about fixing stuff, though, and the ones who aren't, I tell you all about it.
Well, and even the companies that are great, like I have a light back at Surefire right now. Stuff happens. It depends on how good the company is at fixing it.
That's true. Now, the other thing at SHOT Show that I was crazy excited about, and by the way, everybody, we're going on a little bit longer for this podcast because we know you're all fucking trapped at home with nothing better to do. But I was really, really into all of the roller delayed pistol caliber carbine stuff. Specifically for me, the most exciting one was the Angstat. It's going to have AR-15 ergonomics. It weighs like 4 pounds. It's almost made locally. I think it's made up the road by about an hour away. God, that's an awesome, awesome, awesome gun. I can't wait to get one. I might save my pennies and get that even over an MP5 the longer I've thought about it. What do you think of that thing?
Oh, it is for sure the standout for me as well. It's called the MDP9. And
that's right.
It is 14 inches long and 3.6 pounds.
Jesus. God, so even with an MRO and a light on it, it's still going to be less than 4 pounds.
Well, you'd have to throw a brace on there as well, but it will be about that.
Oh, that's without the brace. Okay, so all right, so with a brace, it's going to be 5.25 pounds, 5.25 pounds, which, God, man, that's insane. And it hilariously, that gun with that operating mechanism, with that lightweight, will have far less recoil than a fucking Scorpion or one of these AR-9s that weighs 6 pounds.
The new
God,
Ruger,
that's gonna be a pleasure.
Ruger PC Charger or whatever that weighs like 6 pounds.
And you can still see that thing pushing people around in the review videos.
Yeah, I just finished watching, who is it, Hop from TFB TV.
Yeah.
And I was really rocking him around for a 9mm. I think people don't realize with the direct blowback 9s, they recoil more than the 223 5.56. I would rather
way more.
Right. Even the old Angstads, they were not as pleasant as just a rifle caliber. This gun, though, looks like it's truly the successor to the MP5. 3.6 pounds, it's tiny. It has the Picatinny on the back that SIG kind of brought to market, so you can put any brace on there, folding brace, whatever. It doesn't rely on a buffer tube style design, and it seems to be super smooth. Like, it takes Glock mags, which is a meme at this point, but also useful. It is very compelling. The only problem I see is the MSRP is like $2,600 or something like that.
Yeah,
so I'm
that's
guessing
the real problem.
Guessing street price will be around like $2,200 or so, which is about what MP5 clone costs. And you have flared magwell, you have bolt release, AR-15 safety. You can take AR triggers too, I'm pretty sure, so you could slap a Geisley in there. Like, dude, that is compelling. And
here's what I was thinking there. With the MP5, if I pay the same amount, it's going to weigh more. Mm-hmm. I love the MP5 ergonomics because I have a lot of experience with that platform, but the Angstat is going to have cheaper accessories. I already have all of the magazines ready to go right now. I have a bunch of the accessories ready to go right now, including a trigger, including my beloved safeties, Radian safety and all that stuff. I don't have to buy a fancy handguard like I will for the MP5. I don't have to buy any kind of optics mount like I would with the MP5. I don't have to pay $80 for magazines. In the long run, the Angstat, to get it the way I want it, is actually going to be a lot cheaper.
Right. And arguably more future-proof.
Agreed. And listen, the last round bolt hold open does not matter as much with the MP5 as people say it does, or the lack thereof. But at the same time, that's just gonna be one less thing you have to worry about with that last shot, where you make the last shot, you flinch, you take a moment to go, oh, what the hell is the gun doing right now? Then you remember, then you lock the bolt open, and then you swap the mags. Just having that AR-15 memory built into the system is going to do wonders for reloads.
Oh, for sure. And you're about to be into it with the AKs.
Yeah, I'm already just dicking around with it. I'm already kind of seeing that's going to be something new to learn. That's going to be a hard lesson to learn too. But yeah, so I think that though Angstat's price is really high, and they're going to have a lot of competition from the Strybog A3, which is also a roller delayed gun and is less than half the price. Or more than half the price?
No, it's a little bit less than half the price.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Because it's gonna be what, $1,000?
I think it's like it's $100 or $200 more than the regular one, so it should be under $1,000.
All right. So that'll be, they're gonna have some competition from that gun, but the Strybog is not. It's not an AR-15. No. The Angstat is. It's bringing everything that you love about your AR, but it's a fucking MP5 on the inside.
Well, and I've been seeing a lot of reports, just like with B&T. The Strybog apparently, with their clear polymer magazines, is having a lot of problems with them cracking, especially if you store the magazines loaded. Where the Glock magazine, I mean, it's been proven over the last 30 whatever years.
That's true. I mean, that's very true. We know that it may not have the optimal feeding situation being a single feed, but
right. And it's
a magazine that works, and it looks ugly.
And for the 33 rounders, they're a little bit pricey, especially compared to like Scorpion mags or something. But they're still way cheaper than MP5 mags. They're cheaper than MCX mags. They're cheaper. They're kind of like right in the middle on a lot of things. They're not the best at anything, but they're perfectly adequate in a lot of areas. So I get why they went with the Glock mags.
And most of us already have them, Yeah,
if you did your buying before the panic buying, you probably have a nice little stack of them.
Yeah. I think that this resurgence in roller delayed guns has kind of pointed out a cultural problem within our community. I get really sick of these people who are like, well, recoil from a 9mm, it can't be that bad. Well, no, it's not like you're shooting a fucking 44 against your shoulder or something like that. But why would you not want every advantage that you possibly can take? Why buy a blowback 9mm that has twice the recoil of a 5.56?
Yeah,
a short 5.56.
It's the go to the gym people. Oh, yeah, you can't handle a 12-pound rifle? Just go to the gym. Why do you need a pencil barrel? That kind of people.
Yeah, that's so fucking stupid. Take any advantage you can get. And this gun is offering an insane advantage in performance, so take it. I hear from a lot of these people in the comments on my Scorpion video. I was very critical of how much that gun recoils. But in the year 2019, whenever the Micro Scorpion came out, we know better. Guns don't have to be blowback anymore. It's not 1942 anymore. Right. We have better systems. So something like the Angstat or the Strybog A3 or, the CMMG radial delayed blowback, stuff like that makes a lot more sense. And that's really the way to go with a PCC. Otherwise, if you're just going to buy some blowback fucking piece of shit, just buy a 5.56, like you said. Just buy a 7.5 inch 5.56 arrow and just be done with it.
Well, what blows my mind is when, at least when like the Foxtrot mics or the Scorpion's definitely more of a budget gun, even though the Micro is like over $1,000. The just generic Scorpion was a cheap gun. What blows my mind is when guns like the Noveske Space Invader and stuff, that's still a straight blowback, and it's like over $2,000. Especially when, we were talking about that, how firearm technology really hasn't progressed much in the last 50 years. I mean, when did the MP5 come out? The 60s? And like they figured it out. We've just been going back to even more simple operating systems when they figured this out 60 years ago, you know? The MP5 still has one of the most smoothest recoil impulses of any subgun, and it's taken this long for companies to be like, oh, you know what, we should probably use that. So now we have the Strybog, we have the Angstead Arms, we have the radial delayed blowback is a great innovation in achieving the same feeling but in a different mechanical way. It's just nice to see companies really embracing this instead of cheaping out and going straight blowback.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I'm you were right. The MP5 was 66. I was thinking of the roller blade system in general in the G3.
Oh,
yeah.
What was it? 60?
I think it was like it was 1966. I think.
Oh, sweet, man!
65
dude, it's been forever. And we still have straight blowback.
And even then, the reason that the MP5 became the most popular submachine gun of its time is all these folks who were used to using blowback submachine guns picked up this new piece of technology, fired it, and said, "Well, fuck that Uzi. Why would I ever buy the fucking Uzi when I can have this thing?"
That would also be an awesome patch. Fuck that Uzi.
Fuck that Uzi. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Well, I think we should save our criticism of SHOT Show for another show when we can just sit here and just fucking tear it apart. So
there's a lot to tear apart in 2020, So I think that's fair. We can have just a shit on SHOT Show 2020 podcast.
Yeah. Much like the Scorpion, you know what else wasn't very good this year? The Mandalorian.
It was fine. It was good. I'm not going to go out and buy a $500 Microtech with different paints just because of the Mandalorian. It was fine.
Yeah, it was just okay. It's completely decent, not horrible, not great, just fine. And it shows you how much the Disney lowered the Star Trek bar, or Star Wars. Wow, we were talking about Star Trek so much earlier. They've lowered the Star Wars bar so much that anything that isn't just an absolute, fucking Chernobyl fire, where we clap and say, "Oh, thank you, Disney, thank you for this."
Which, I mean, humorously, Chernobyl, very entertaining.
That's right. But Chernobyl, a much better show than The Mandalorian.
Is Bounty Hunters, like the Bounty Hunter insignia, Mandalorian insignia, is that like the replacement for the Punisher skull? Because I've been seeing Mandalorian shit everywhere for like the last 5 years. And like Boba Fett, cool character. Jango Fett, less cool, but still kind of cool character. And like Microtech, the Star Wars series, those bounty hunter models go for hundreds of dollars more on the secondary market than the Jedis or Siths or whatever. What's up with that? Do you know?
I don't. I mean, all I know is that for whatever reason, there's a ton of overlap between people who are diabetic 3%ers and are into Mandalorian stuff and Punisher garbage.
Punisher 3-per, definitely 3-per.
Yeah, you're definitely going to be buying Mandalorian stuff because I guess you're trying to convey the message that you are paid money to hunt people who look different than you.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
It's a weird message.
And yeah, it's just not to be too critical of continuity, but a lot of the things in The Mandalorian that kind of bothered me as a nerd was like, so the carbonite, right? The whole reason they put Han Solo in carbonite.
I know.
Okay, so you're on the same wavelength as me, right? It
was
a very dangerous thing that they were using.
Yes.
It was a very dangerous thing they were using. They even say, like, there's a pretty high percentage chance that this kills him. And because it was just some mining shit they had on that planet already. And they're like, no, we need to do this now because we need to capture him. And, like, now carbonite's just it's like trading cards for bounty hunters where you put your bounty in. And, like, the Mandalorian show, perfectly adequate. I very much enjoyed it. My kids did not give a crap. So it ended up with me watching it on my laptop by myself. But, like, totally enjoyable. I really like the Viper. I forget what his name is. He was in The Equalizer 2, and he was the Viper in Game of Thrones. But he is great. He is able to portray a lot of emotion without seeing his face. I'm really happy they didn't show his face until the very end. Spoiler alert. But like, I like Gina Carano a lot from Haywire. She was in it.
She's great.
Totally fine.
She stole the show, really.
Yeah, she was really good in that episode because she was like, she's always one of the people where like she beats the shit out of dudes, and you're like, well, yeah. I mean, it looks like she's beating the shit out of dudes. It's not like when Scarlett Johansson has to be all badass or something. It's like she's 5'2" and weighs 100 pounds. It's just not believable. Gina Carano like is really good at fighting, so she was totally believable. I really liked her character, and I liked the bounty hunters. Like Bill Burr was one of the famous bounty hunters. There was little bits and pieces. I thought the first episode was shot really well. It looked like a movie. After that, it looks like a TV show. My favorite episode was probably, I think it's the second one, where he gets the mission from the Jawas and has to go get a MacGuffin, essentially.
Of course.
I don't know. What did you think about it? Everything Star Wars, I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I didn't hate the movies like everyone does. I'm like, they're movies. It's what I expected. I don't love the show as much as everyone else does, apparently. It was fine. It felt like it very much felt like it had the similar tone to Firefly, just without a lot of the humor. Are you familiar with Firefly at all?
Vaguely. God, you're gonna hate me for this. I've started it like 4 times, and I always watch a little bit, and I go, it's fine, and then I just kind of forget about it and don't ever finish.
No, that's fair, man. It's acquired taste. I think you had to see it when it was on. I don't know. What do you think about The Mandalorian? Because you were the one who got me to do my Disney Plus to watch it. So,
well, I really so the first 2 episodes. That's when I was sort of when I texted you and said, "Hey, man, I think this is really good. I think this is going to be great."
Yeah, those were the peak.
The more
for sure.
it wore on, I thought it was going to build into something. I thought it was going to work the way most shows work, where for the first 2 episodes, you're essentially just finding your footing, trying to figure out what will this show be, and then it will build into its ultimate sort of form. The Mandalorian did the opposite, where the I don't know if you'd even call it a pilot in this case, because everything is so pre-planned and carefully crafted fan service. You have the pilot and the second episode, and I thought, man, if this is the beginning, what's it gonna become? And then I remember thinking, okay, well, we're actually losing whatever it was that made those first 2 episodes great. We're losing whatever atmosphere they had that worked so well. And now it's just becoming almost like a procedural show, where there's no character development. Everything resets at the end, and everybody just goes back to exactly the way they were. It reminds me of like watching like Miami Vice or something, or
like Walker Texas Ranger.
Right. I mean, it actually does remind me of Walker Texas Ranger. Weirdly.
Yep. He rolls into town. There's a new bad guy to catch. He catches him. Rolls into a new town.
And his relationship with the other characters never changes, and there's that sort of false depth that's given by sort of showing them have struggles that are never resolved. So it sort of gives you the same inner feeling of, oh, there was personal conflict here, even though there wasn't, because there's never any resolution.
It also, like, I don't know if it's just me nitpicking or not, but he tries to give away Baby Yoda in like every single episode.
Yes, he does.
You're supposed to be like, oh, look at, because he kind of has a Malcolm Reynolds vibe. And Baby Yoda could be like River from River Tam from Firefly, where it's like, outlaw kind of on the skirting the border between good guy and bad guy, but he's still an honorable dude, and he gives up like he finds his greater purpose in protecting someone who needs his protection, which is why I thought they were tonally very similar. But like he tries to give her away. I don't know what gender it identifies as, but Baby Yoda tries to give them away at like every opportunity he has. So everyone kept talking about, Baby Yoda is super cute. I will give them that. It looks kind of like a Gizmo, like a little Yoda Gizmo from Gremlins.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
But I don't know, man. It was fine. I'll watch season 2.
Yeah, I mean it's just fine, but it's thrown into sharp contrast by Picard, because Picard, I went into it thinking this is going to be a steaming pile of shit. I'm going to hate it, and I'm only watching it because it has TNG characters in it. And I'll be damned, Picard is one of the best things to be on television in quite a while. Picard is stunningly great. It's amazingly well crafted. I cannot recommend it enough. That's good goddamn TV right there. Have you watched Picard yet?
Yes, I don't love it as much as you do, but I also don't hate it as much as Red Letter Media does. So I'm somewhere in the middle on it. It's very well shot. It's well written. If you're trying to mush it into Star Trek lore, like the story Bible, there's some problems there.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you take it as like a separate thing involving characters, the way I think about it is, did you ever read comic books growing up, where DC and Marvel they had like Elseworlds tales, where it'll be like the character you love, but like in a side story that has nothing to do with the main one. So like they had Wolverine. They had Wolverine killing all the zombies, or the Punisher killing all the Marvel zombies, or they had Superman, instead of crashing in Kansas, he crashes in Soviet Russia, and he's like a communist. And this feels like an Elseworlds tale, what Picard could have become later. And as that, I'm a big fan. It also is a very tight story, I noticed. It like you could watch this season, and even though it kind of ends on a cliffhanger, I don't want to get into spoilers. But with the whole Remembrance reclamation site and everything,
yes,
you could watch this season as a self-contained thing without knowing anything about the next generation, which I think is a feat in and of itself. And I feel like it's more faithful to the source material as an Elseworlds tale than like the J.J. Abrams movies were. So if you're a Star Trek fan, I could see a lot of Star Trek fans really appreciating the series, where a lot of people didn't like the movies. I thought they were fun, but it's a lot better than Discovery. I rage stopped watching. Like, it drove me so nuts I stopped watching it. This one I'll watch as much as they do. The only other comment I would like to make is, I don't know when it happened precisely, but sometime in the middle of between Taken 1 and every other movie Liam Neeson's been in, he started to look old. Like, when he's running and jumping and everything. And, it's just weird with an action star. It cracked me up. I think it was the first episode when he's with the person that I don't want to spoil, and they're like running away, and then there's like a whole big fight and everything. I'm pretty sure Jean-Luc Picard had to have a body double to run up the stairs.
To avoid old Neeson running.
I don't know. I don't know what's up, man. But he's to the point where it's like, oh, be careful. Like every time he runs, it's like, or moves quickly, it's like, oh no, be careful, man.
But I kind of like that though, because Patrick Stewart has aged really well. You know,
yes.
Even though he's like 10 years older than Liam Neeson, but he looks like they're about the same age. You know, but Patrick Stewart is. I don't know though. He's at least 80, but I think so. I think he's 80, but he brings a level of fragility to the role that I find really, really refreshing. Because like in something like First Contact, you know, he plays Picard as like a fucking action hero guy, you know, and here, you know, Patrick Stewart's playing Picard as an 80-year-old man with 80-year-old man problems. Well, he's actually playing a 100-year-old man in the show. He's supposed to be 100.
Yeah, he's 79 in real life.
Gotcha. Well, that's old as fuck.
It's nice to see him be, because you can still see he's the strong captain, but he's having to come to terms with not being the strong captain, which is a very fascinating character arc for him. And Patrick Stewart's a great actor. He knocks it out of the park for sure.
Everybody on the show does, but see, I don't see this though as being a sort of a side story. I genuinely see this as a worthy continuation of that story. And I think it seems to me like what you're really saying is, you know, you wish that just because of your love of the source material, you wish that the sort of core story had gone a different direction more than the actual execution of that story. Is that true?
That's fair. There's I will say the bad guy, the bad collective by the end of the season, I think that the lore of that is being misused. So I don't know if it's I think Picard's character arc is perfectly in line. I think it's the stuff around his character that doesn't fit super well for me, which is why in my brain it's like, oh, it's a perfectly enjoyable Elseworlds tale that's done very well, competently, if that makes sense.
See. Yeah, of course. I guess I'm sort of getting what I've always wanted from Star Trek. All I've ever really required of them was that they show me something new. And that's one of the reasons why, like you, I certainly enjoyed the Abrams stories. They were fine. Those movies were great. They worked
fun,
just fine.
little adventure movies, popcorn adventure movies.
But Discovery did not show me something new. It was doing the whole prequel thing, which was the problem with Enterprise. It was just I don't like that. Like, Star Trek has always been about pushing forward further and further into the future, to use the future to talk about present problems, and neither Enterprise nor Discovery did that in a really compelling way. Whereas I feel like Picard is a return to the idea that we're going to push, into this sort of unknown time and show the problems they would encounter to talk about our present ones. And I really, really like that. So I almost don't care so much about the lore continuity and whatnot, as long as they are using these characters to create an interesting morality play that I can enjoy.
I'm right on board with that. Totally fair enough.
So that's I think that Picard, I'll be curious to see what they do with the second season, because Star Trek notoriously has rough first and second seasons, and then the show blossoms into something really amazing. It's sort of always been that way. That's one of the reasons why CBS has stuck it out with Discovery, and why, when they get to the fourth season, maybe I'll give it another try too. Because TNG, the first two seasons were fucking rough.
Oh yeah,
I'm a
people
huge fan of
that.
Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, people forget
absolutely.
that. They definitely did not come into their own for a while, and then it got so good you forgot how rough the beginning was.
Absolutely, and then in a lot of cases they just quit airing those early episodes, like season 2 with Dr. Pulaski. They just
I did not know that.
On. Yeah, it's I mean, or at least I don't recall seeing those on TV really ever. Whereas it was season 3 through 7 just constantly on a loop.
Interesting.
Now,
I would believe
what did you think of Deep Space Nine?
Deep Space Nine, I was not a super huge fan of, but the majority of my Star Trek growing up was watching it with my dad, and my dad didn't like Deep Space Nine, so I've never gone back to it as an adult. I just saw episodes here and there as a kid, so I'm not sure. I'll have to give that a go, because I'm curious now because of some stuff that happens in the new one.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm trying not to spoil anything.
Sure. And I don't care so much for Voyager quite as much. Voyager, it's fine. It's totally fine. But Deep Space Nine is something exceptionally good.
Yeah, my dad really liked Enterprise, so I saw a lot of Enterprise, and I was not a super huge fan.
No, man, it was also, Enterprise was a move from these really beautiful models and practical effects to just wretchedly awful, like, discount CGI. Oh man, it was ugly. That was an ugly show.
Yeah, that's going to be a rough time in American cinema and American television. Was that like early CGI time? Because you can still watch movies, from classic cinema all the way back to the 30s and 40s, all the way up to classic blockbusters like even Jurassic Park or Jaws and Gremlins, anything with models and practical effects. And then you have that weird like Scorpion King era. No one's going to watch them again, That we have like a solid 2 decades of American cinema that's just gone because it's almost unwatchable. It looks so bad. And that early TV CGI, it does not hold up, man.
Yeah. It's rough. It's like, it is, comparing the models in TNG to the CGI in Enterprise. It's like watching the Scorpion King and then going back and watching Blade Runner. And seeing
it's a good comparison.
Yeah, seeing the fly up to the Tyrell Corporation, one of the best effects shots probably ever.
Yeah, it still holds up. That's what I mean. It still holds up perfectly fine.
Yeah, but I'm a huge fan of practical effects. That's what I was. That was when I was failing out of film school. The study of practical effects was one of my favorite things. I really focused hard on that. I love that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's why I like horror movies so much.
Oh man, absolutely. Okay. On that note, then, question for you: which horror movie made between 1968 and 1990 has your favorite special effects, and why?
Oh, The Thing, the remake, John Carpenter's The Thing.
I knew you were gonna say that. I knew you were gonna say that
because it still grosses me out today, and it's almost it's hard to wrap your mind around something being made that long ago. I know it's silly to say that long ago, but that still works as well now as it did then. And I think, honestly, even a lot of modern horror movies aren't going to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, did you see I can't remember if it was a remake or a sequel that was all CGI that came out maybe 10 or 15 years ago? It was like a Thing reboot, and it was really funny to see.
It had Joel Edgerton and Mary Elizabeth Winstead in it. And it was almost shot-for-shot remake of the John Carpenter Thing, except for every tense practical effect moment, they had just hysterically bad CGI. And the end battle thing was one of the worst things I've ever seen on screen in my life, in terms of like practicality. It also didn't help that like I audibly, loudly laughed in the theater and got a bunch of dirty looks. But yeah, I was really pumped for that movie. It felt very similar to Whiteout, which was a Kate Beckinsale movie that was based on a comic book, and the comic book was based and heavily inspired on The Thing. So it was weird that like a movie based on a comic book based on The Thing came out before the Thing reboot and was a better Thing movie than the Thing movie, if that makes sense. But
that's a strange thing.
Yeah, that was a time in my life when I was seeing everything in theaters because I had a friend who worked at the movie theater. So, yep, I definitely saw that remake in the theaters, and it was not a good time for me.
Well, my apologies. I'm sorry you had to see that. That's that just shows a filmmaker who just fundamentally didn't fucking get it. That just did not, on a very basic level, understand what it was about that movie that made it great. But now, if I asked you the same question, I said you cannot choose The Thing, what would you pick?
That is a good question. Off the top of my head, I'm struggling. What would you say?
If I couldn't pick The Thing, because The Thing is if you had asked me the same question, The Thing is that's the answer, obviously. Especially the way the props can like turn inside out and like turn on themselves, and I mean it's fucking wild. It's crazy, and the way that some of the processes are sort of like 4 steps. Where like it's gonna turn inside of itself, then it's gonna pull to the left, and then tear apart, and then there are legs inside of it that are gonna come out, and it's gonna run the fuck away. That's crazy. This movie is not as insanely good as The Thing, effects-wise, but I would probably say the original Alien for its use of matte paintings. Some of the matte paintings in Alien of the surface of the LV-426 and of the inside of the derelict alien spacecraft, especially when, who is it? Is it Kane? Yeah, it's Kane, is being lowered down on the rope down into the chamber with all the eggs and stuff in it. That's crazy. It's crazy to think that was a matte painting and a real set. And then of course the famous set with the fossilized alien guy in it, and I think it was Ridley Scott's kids have on spacesuits and are like climbing around all over it. It's just incredible to look at. Just a beautiful piece of cinema history. And then of course the actual alien costume. They had the really skinny guy get in it and run around the set. That's good shit. Hard to beat that. And the whole having the Nostromo be an actual set. That's such a beautiful set.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like unrivaled. The level of detail, and again, Alien's one of those movies that holds up still, which is just it's truly a feat of artistry because that even the chestburster scene, like I remember showing that movie to my wife for the first time because she did not see much pop culture stuff before we got married, and it's like, okay, you gotta watch this movie, and she was like, oh, it's an old movie. It's like, yeah, it's an old movie, and by that scene, it's like, holy crap, like even people like nowadays that don't think of movies pre like 1990 as something you want to watch, the Alien still holds up. I would say as well today as it does back then, but I don't think people give movies the benefit of the doubt because Alien's so special because you get to like slowly grow with the characters and figure out all the social dynamics and figure out where everyone kind of stands in the hierarchy. And when the shit finally hits the fan, it hits that much harder because it doesn't feel like the shit should be hitting the fan, if that makes sense. And Alien, man, we could do a whole podcast just on Alien.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you were saying about how, there's that sort of inner horror of you knowing that the situation was entirely avoidable. Like if some people had just made, I don't want to give any spoilers away, if some people had just made different decisions, it's, oh man, it's so good. And I like what you were saying about the social dynamic. Like the whole first hour is just dedicated to that existing tension,
Right. And it feels like real, blue collar shipping container type, like workers that are, it just feels so real, which I think was missing from a lot of sci-fi, even The Next Generation, which I'm such a huge fan of. I'm a fan of it because it doesn't feel real, but it feels like what I want real to feel like, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like
of course, yeah.
I want the Federation and Enterprise and everything's clean and pristine and healthcare's great and there's no money and you just live in like this almost kind of like a socialist utopia. It seems so futuristic and nice, but the Nostromo is just like, ugh. Like, it feels like it could be in a freighter somewhere here right now. And then this horrible, atrocious thing happens. And what I think is so fascinating is basically the same movie was remade recently with, it was called Life, with Ryan Reynolds and Jake Gyllenhaal, where they're on the International Space Station and they find this little alien organism, and then a few bad decisions and it ends up, destroying everything. And it feels I've heard about this. Yeah, it feels so similar to Alien, but worse in every way. And it's like, when did Alien come out? Like 78 or something like that?
79.
79. That, like, a movie made in 2018 could almost remake Alien, just worse. 40, 50 years later is crazy to me. And the effects still... That first chest burster scene, ugh. That's in movie history for sure.
They apparently didn't tell Veronica Cartwright that was about to happen. And so her reaction, where that sort of hard cut to her expression, is that's her legitimately looking at that and going, that's the worst. It's
that's one of those like history of film stories that like it just makes you chuckle. It's such a good like impromptu director type deal. Like in the original Exorcist, apparently they were like really throwing around the people with cords and stuff, and people were always getting injured, and that's why it looks so violent when someone gets thrown against a wall or something.
Because it is.
Yeah, because it is, and they got like legitimately injured doing it. It's just like those history of film, like little nuggets that are so much fun to learn.
Oh, totally, man. And I like what you said too about if Star Trek is the socialist utopia that we want, Alien is the capitalistic nightmare that we will get.
Mm-hmm. Or Blade Runner. I always picture Blade Runner.
Yeah, or Blade Runner. Yeah, I mean, one of those two things is the future as we will know it, unfortunately.
Blade Runner, the second one blew my mind. Did you see the second one?
No, I've put it off. I don't know why. Dude, I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
I didn't see it in theaters because I thought for sure it was gonna ruin it for me. And
yeah, me too.
My brother was hyping it up so much. He's like, give it a watch. So I finally watched it a few months ago, and I wish I'd seen it in theaters, man. Jared Leto, I'm not a fan of his character in that movie, but every other part of it is so good. Did you ever see the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix?
No, I didn't.
Oh, that's another one. That's a future I could see really happening. Anyways, I would watch.
I'll check both of those out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm adding those to the list. Man, we have really covered a lot of ground in this one. This was a super fun podcast. Thank you all so much for following us on this rambling, insane podcasting journey. I hope this has been interesting. Hopefully this will fill some of the time in your day as you're all trapped at home with nothing else to do other than listen to us morons yak. And we're going to try to do these more frequently during the quarantine so that all of you will have something huge to listen to a bit more frequently. So thank you all for joining us. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. It was a pleasure as always.
Oh yeah, man. I really enjoyed chatting with you. And we're only at like a third of a Rogan episode right now. I think our goal should be to eventually get to a Rogan episode. like a
one
solid
full Rogan. Yeah.
We're gonna go one full Rogan. We'll settle with hitting half Rogan, and we're getting close to half Rogan, so that'll be a good first step. I mean, we're not even out of our podcast infancy yet, and we're already getting there. So this has been a blast, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon.
Thank you, and I'm gonna go into the bathroom and deal with this half Rogan that I've been sporting for the last 30 minutes.
Enjoy your bathtub time. See you later, man.
Thank you. Good night.